saludarles. Mi nombre es Rosa Isela Ramírez de The Natural Vets de México. El día de hoy tengo dos grandes amigas que les quiero presentar, también veterinarias, y que hemos compartido muchas aventuras con los animales y en estudios juntas. Y es un honor tenerlas para mí el día de hoy en esta plática. Welcome, girls. It's such a pleasure having you here.
Thank you for inviting us on, Rosie.
Yeah. So I want to ask you guys, please introduce yourself first. Yeah. Tell me, who are you?
Sure, I'll lead off. My name's Laura Weiss. I'm a small animal veterinarian. I've been practicing, in Pennsylvania for about the last 22 years. I always knew that I wanted to be a veterinarian from the time that I was, 2 years old, 3 years old, as early as I can remember. And, shot through on that straight sort of conventional vet pathway. And got out of school, opened a practice with my husband, who's also a vet. And it was probably about 5 years into practice that I started to feel like, okay, what else? we had all of our conventional therapies, but unfortunately a lot of conditions that we couldn't treat. So that launched me on a path of studying nutrition, animal nutrition, and worked on that pretty extensively for the next few years, and some herbal medicine, mostly Western herbal medicine, and then eventually to my true passion, which is homeopathy.
Yeah.
And that's where I find myself now.
Thank you, Laura. What about you, Jody?
I'm Jody Bearman. I'm a mixed animal veterinarian, mostly small animal, but I do all species. And I've been a veterinarian for 29 years. I started out with conventional, but even when I was in vet school, my classmates decided they wanted to learn from a local homeopathic veterinarian and asked me if I'd like to be in that group. So I did that for a year with them, but he wasn't a very good veterinarian. So we all kind of learned a little bit, but didn't take it all in. And it took me 13 years to pay off my student loans, so I didn't have enough money to take other courses until those were paid off. But as soon as I did, I started taking traditional Chinese veterinary medicine courses at the Chi Institute in Florida.
Yeah.
And I took my acupuncture, all my herbal medicine, food therapy, and then and Tui Na, which is Chinese massage. And then I taught there. And then I worked with a veterinarian in Hawaii for a couple of years who did homeopathy. And I learned some from her. And then I did chiropractic courses because she really wanted me to learn that. And then I took the Pitcairn course with Rosie and Laura for homeopathy. And then I just felt like I didn't learn enough. So then I started in the human school, and I'm graduating now this fall. So it's been a great journey.
Yeah, quite an adventure, right? Yeah, so you guys, I know we had the passion from our childhood experiences about how we wanted to be a vet. When was your decision? Why did you say, I want to be a vet?
I don't know how to answer that, Rosie. It's a knowing. It's a knowing, Yeah. I can't remember not knowing. I actually, when I was in college, got a bit diverted. I couldn't decide. There were so many amazing choices in front of me. And I actually applied to law school and to culinary school, and thought about graduate school in studying primates and anthropology. And so I knew that I needed to take a little pause. So I worked for 4 years after getting out of college before going back to vet school again. And a couple of those years, I thought about graduate school in communication. I did debate and coached the debate team, but those were all just things that needed to be explored. until eventually coming back to the knowing. And the
Yeah.
knowing was, this is what I was put on this earth to do.
Yeah. What about you, Jody?
Well, a lot like Laura, I always knew, I think, and my dog as a child was really my best friend. I mean, I had a lot of human friends too, but my dog protected me and slept with me every night, and I would do anything for her. And then but like you, Laura, when I was in undergrad, I was a music major actually to start. And I thought about still being a music major, but then I started taking science courses, and I was taking science courses, but I just love science, really love science. And then I worked in a molecular biology lab, and I loved it. And my professor, who I was the only undergrad in that lab, and he, without telling me, he got me set up to do a PhD in molecular biology with one of his friends. And then I asked him to sign a paper for me to go to vet school because I had some friends in a chemistry class. I think in organic chemistry with me, there were a couple guys that I was friends with, and I'm like, I just really want to go to vet school, but if you don't take the tests, you'll never get in. You have to take the tests. And I'm like, oh, there's tests. And so I did that, and I did well. And then I asked my professor, and he was pretty upset with me. But even though bacteria and viruses are kind of fun, you can't them and cuddle them, and I just really wanted to have animals that I could put my hands on, and I don't regret it at all.
Yeah. Do you have a story to share, or something that you remember from school or from your conventional veterinarian life that you want to share with us?
Jody, you want to lead?
Sure. That made me want to do alternative, that made me leave.
Yeah, before.
Yeah, so I had already been taking my acupuncture courses when I treated this greyhound named Colt. And I still remember, even though it was a long time ago now, like 16 years ago, I was treating this greyhound for a GI problem. And I used the regular medicine that everybody uses, an antibiotic. I think it was a GI problem, the original problem that he was presenting with. The sweetest dog, and his mom was a doctor, a human doctor, and dad was too, and the guardians. And he was just the sweetest boy. And the antibiotic I gave him killed him.
Oh.
Well, it led to him needing to be euthanized. There was nothing conventional medicine could do to treat him. The people, I had already learned acupuncture, or I was learning it, and I said, well, I could acupuncture him, and they said no. And we had to put him to sleep because he was dying. And it was just from that antibiotic. And there were so many cases like that. I remember way long ago, I saw a puppy that had hip dysplasia on radiographs. And the man, I told him, you can't give aspirin. This was a long time ago, before there were other non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. But I have also seen this with other non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. The man gave the puppy aspirin and it died.
Yeah.
So there are just so many cases like that where even we were doing the right thing, and it was the only thing, it was what we had available at the time, or even what we have available now, and there's no treatment, or the medicine we gave killed them. There's just so many cases like that. We couldn't even get a diagnosis even. We never find what is it, and they die, or we have to euthanize them. And I just kept thinking, there must be something else. There must be something else that we can do to diagnose and treat these animals. It's so many of those, but that's the last one that finally I'm like, that's it, I quit. I'm just going to start my own business and only do this.
Yeah, sometimes we see that, right? And that's because we want something else for our clients or patients to stay alive, and we can do something else. Yeah. What about you, Laura? What you felt?
So my story that I was thinking of doesn't have quite such a dire ending, but it wasn't due to me. There was a little French bulldog puppy that was owned by friends of ours. His name was Ulysses. It goes by Yuli, and just this funny in the way that only Frenchies can be, puppy. And he started developing chronic diarrhea. He was diagnosed, as many of those puppies are, with giardia, and went through a series of conventional therapies for it, which, he not only kept testing positive, but he kept being symptomatic. And he was referred to specialists, and he went through round after round of various antibiotics and testing and hydrolyzed diets and specialty things and endoscopies and biopsies and diagnoses. And at the end of it, they said, and this had been going on now for 6 months, they basically just diagnosed him as a failure to thrive after all of this and said, you should euthanize him. And thank goodness his guardian said, well, we know this lady, she's a little crazy. She went to a year of vet school and she never graduated, but she's got some other ideas. And she's like, oh, he'll be fine. And she put him on a raw diet, and she gave him some clay, and she gave him some herbs. And Yuli's still alive and kicking to this day and doing just fine. And I remember my husband and I at the time thinking, I think we're missing something.
That's true. That's true. And that's the key. Yeah.
So Yuli had a happy outcome, but only because his guardians were more thoughtful and had a better worldview than all the specialists that they went to go see.
Yeah, that's true. That's the starting point when you change your mind and are open for new options or different options, right?
Yes.
Maybe there are no new, just we don't know about them.
Yes, these were not new options. These were things that have been around for decades. It's how dogs should eat, and you're right. It's just opening your eyes to options other than those that you're just trained to know about conventionally.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And what about homeopathy? Why we got involved with that world? We're shining when we mention the word.
Yeah.
Why? Tell us, Jody.
Oh, why did I get into homeopathy? Well, like I said earlier, that I was with that group when I was in vet school, so a long time ago. It was probably 1990 or 89 or something. That I worked with that. We studied with this homeopathic vet, but again, the group of us didn't really respect him because he didn't practice good medicine. If remedies didn't work, he would just give them steroids. And so like, no. But then, was it my first job? No, it was like my second job after school, but it was maybe only a year after school. We had distemper puppies come in. Rosie, I thought you would appreciate that. 2 Weimaraners that had distemper. Mm-hmm. And of course, in our conventional medicine, there isn't really anything you can do. I mean, you can treat them with broad spectrum antibiotics and give them fluids, and there just isn't a lot to do. And I called one of my friends who was in that course with me, and I'm like, Donna, do you remember what he said we could do? And she goes, you know what? And the only thing that I had remembered, and I don't know why I remembered this, was like tomato juice. And so before I even called Donna, I started giving the puppies tomato juice, and they started getting better. And then I called Donna and I said, what else do you remember what else he said? And she's like, vitamin C and some other things like that. It wasn't homeopathy, but the puppies both ended up living. Wow. And yeah. And it was really shocking to everybody. And my boss was like, I don't know what kind of weird stuff you're doing, but
shamanic, good job.
Right. And so I always had it in my mind that was something. And then when I went to Hawaii and worked with the homeopathic vet there, it was just amazing what I saw. And the kind of weird thing that happened was sometimes I would just know. And I didn't know how I knew. It would just come. like I had a reaction. I had to give this drug called Promeris that was taken off the market shortly afterwards to this dog. And I told for Demodex. And my boss said, I want you to treat with Promeris. And I said, well, Demodex is easily treated with Chinese medicine. I can easily treat. No, you need to give Promeris, which I thought was very strange. I opened the package and I fell to the ground. And I couldn't get up. And it was later shown that this drug caused autoimmune disease in dogs. And I had autoimmune disease at that time. And I couldn't get up and she gave me a dose of nuts and it didn't do anything. And I was laying there, I could barely speak and I could hardly breathe. And I said, snake venom. And she goes, oh yeah, I guess lachesis works. She gave me a dose of lachesis and I got right up.
Wow.
And it was like, it came into my head, the word, and came out of my mouth. I have no idea because I really didn't know enough to know remedies.
Yeah, I remember you from the PIVH school, and you were beside me, and I thought, oh my God, I'm new with this, and Jody knows a lot.
But I didn't really know that much. We used it at that clinic post-surgically. So we gave all the animals homeopathy post-surgically. And then I did treat a patient and my boss would just say, well, just look it up in the book. And she had Vermeulen's green book. And so she just, well, just look it up. And she said, I've seen this one dog for 2 years now and I can't do anything. Why don't you just see this dog? Because I don't know what to do. And the people said to me, I'm sorry, I'm kind of going on here. The people said to me, this dog has been so itchy and the other doctor can't seem to do anything about the itchiness and we can't do anything. And we're feeding raw food. We're doing everything right. We don't know what to do. This dog is so itchy. And it was a little white dog. And you know, they have very sensitive immune systems, little white dogs. And I said, well, tell me about when this started. And they said, well, she was attacked by a big dog and she was scared to death. I mean, scared to death. And I go, oh, I know that remedy. That's aconite. And so I went and looked it up to see if it had itchiness and did. This is all I knew. I didn't know how to work up cases or anything. And then I went back and I said, well, let's give a dose of this remedy. And I just gave her like a 30C. She was never itchy again. And I thought, this is the medicine I want. I have to learn more. I need to learn this.
Yeah. What about you, Laura?
Wow, that's a dramatic case. I wish my itchy cases would get better than these.
I know.
I was like, oh, I'm going to send them all to Jody. So for me, it's funny, as you were answering that, I'm thinking that even as I baby steps out of conventional medicine, homeopathy still seemed like the weirdest thing. You know, I could sort of understand herbs and you know, those still have material doses of substances, and you talk about binding sites, and it seems like, oh, that's more just like a natural medicine. And then I could just sort of understand acupuncture, at least sort of how Western acupuncture is explained. But homeopathy would always kind of like, oh, you know, those people who believe in that. So I think that was the universe's big joke, was like, yo, Laura, you're going to end up as a homeopath. You know? So my first introduction to it was actually on the human side with a relative who had cancer and had come to the end of what, you know, surgery and chemotherapy, et cetera, could do, and turned to, you know, look at other options, and just by chance happened to connect with a homeopath who was very skilled. And you know, the progression of the disease was slowed considerably to the point where she was able to have a very good quality of life. And you know, it was not a cure, but it was better than anything else that she was offered by any other, you know, modality of medicine. And so she was able to live her life for several more months and then died very quickly at the end without, you know, a lot of suffering, which is the typical course for the type of cancer that she had. And I thought, okay, I have to learn more.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, and homeopathy, probably has that kind of feeling when students come to us to learn natural medicine. They always go with my husband. With acupuncture and with herbs and homeopathy, they avoid. They're like, oh my God, that's weird.
That's weird.
Yeah. And yeah, but when your mindset changes, everything comes clear. Yeah, becomes clear. Yeah. And yeah, it's amazing what we see in cases. Yeah, I want to see more skin cases like you. Jody.
One dose of 30C, gone forever.
Of course, that's not the usual. But these people said that, oh, she was scared to death. And that's when the itching started. You know, it was like, oh, well, that, yeah. But that isn't usually the case.
That's beautiful, though. They were able to speak her language.
Yeah.
So after these whole years we have been together in different schools, what do you see or what do you feel with homeopathy in your companions and with your clients and your life? What's different now?
What's different?
How you have evolved?
So I think when I first started at the Pitcairn Institute, my studies were, I think it's an excellent grounding. My studies were really focused on learning remedies and studying how to repertorize and work up cases and
Philosophy.
really, yeah, and just learning this new system. And, you know, as I think both of you experienced, after some period of time, I knew that there was more. I knew that there was more, and there was just, it was more than just a weekend course or a little continuing education or a webinar here and there. And so the evolution has been to understanding or beginning to understand, let's put it that way, on so many different planes, on an emotional, a psychological, a spiritual, and, you know, the material level, and how those all interact, and how the language of the remedy can speak in so many different ways, in so many different patterns, and how it's expressed by each unique individual in living their own life here. And that's it sounds like that's a pretty far step away from medicine, you know, to understand the language of the remedy and the language of a person's disease. But that's been my evolution, you know, is learning how to start. It is learning another language, learning how to start understanding it and understanding things that people would say to me, or that I never was able to coherently understand what that meant before.
Yeah.
Hope that's clear as mud.
I know sometimes it is. What about you?
That is really beautiful, Laura. That is such a good description. And I think one of the things that happened with me is clients would tell me the language of remedies before I knew what they were saying, before I knew this. And I would think I'm supposed to do something with this, but I don't know what to do with it. And even with our veterinary courses, we weren't taught to truly be the non-judgmental observer. We were taught to put it through our own lens of being a veterinarian and not listen to just the words the person was using or the language that the animal was giving us. And what especially the last 2 years of student clinic did for me was really learning to be the non-judgmental observer, just being, and being able to write down what they're saying, and then to feel my feelings about the patient well, it depends. Those are usually humans, but even the animals, when I'm taking a case from a person about an animal, I'm really listening to their words. I'm writing down as many of the words as I can and asking them things like, if your animal could speak, what would they say about who they are?
Yeah.
Or what words do you use to describe them? Do you have nicknames? Do you have what do you say who they are? I had this one client say, we call her the cat dragon. The cat dragon. And she lays a dog across the backs of their necks, a cat dragon. And I had worked up lachesis, and that is a cat dragon, kind of, I think, and on that particular dog. And just the things they would say, things. I had this one horse that I had a really hard time getting just to the depth of it. I mean, definitely everything I did helped, but I was wondering about a certain remedy, and I said, how does she feel about her image? Oh, that's everything to her. Image is everything to her. Every time we go in the arena, she looks in the mirror at herself, and it's like, yes, that is me. That is me. Whoa. And she looks at it. And I have found that the silica animals tend to look in the mirror, which is so interesting, although some other remedies do too. So it doesn't mean it is silica. Everything fit. Of course, she had, her teeth were rotting at the roots and a lot of other things, but just to really, really listen, take out anything else in my mind. Don't give any judgments, nothing, just really listen to what the people are saying when they said, she loves to dress up. She loves to dress up a horse. You know, how interesting is that, right? And she wants people to see her as beautiful. She wants to be seen as beautiful. And it's just such an interesting thing. Silica doesn't need to be seen as beautiful, but they want to be seen as whatever they want to be seen as. And so it's just really listening and understanding. And if I don't understand, ask more.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that. Even, about their animals. Tell me more about what happens when she interacts with other animals. Tell me more about who is she in that situation? What is she saying? I ask the people, because it's like dealing with babies, right? They don't use words either. And you ask things like that of people with babies, and it's the same thing. Or any kind of nonverbal someone. You'll say, how do they feel? What is the sense? Because we get the sense when we're taking the case of the person's sense, right? We can feel their sense. And that's something I never knew before. That's hugely important to finding a remedy state.
Yeah.
I mean,
how we feel. That's true. Yeah, sometimes we are as veterinarians, we are so worried about the diagnosis and about the labels, right? And get away from that part. It's not easy. So it's another learning experience. It's like learning another language. And you have to be open to those things that they are in front of you and you are not seeing because you are not trained for that.
Rosie, I would add to that. I think not only are we not trained to hear those things, we're actively trained to disregard those things. Yeah. I remember in vet school clinics and my first few years out, we would joke about, people would tell us all this extraneous information. We don't need to know that. We'd say, we just need to know, when did the coughing start? Are they keeping you up at night? Has their appetite decreased? How's their energy level? Are they running a fever? And, listen to their lungs and do their physical exam. That's what we need to know. We didn't need to know the person, their guardian might say something like, he seems really scared when he starts coughing, or, you know, he was really doing fine. And then we went for a hike and there was a really cold wind. And, you know, that's when I noticed everything changing. And we'd be like, oh, we don't need those details. You know, we were actively trained to filter out that information.
Yeah, that's
So
true. And for
we
us,
had
it's
to go through
really
retraining.
important. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, retraining our minds, because we have so many remedies that we need those key points
Mm-hmm.
to guide us which one is the best for them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the outcome for those animals, or for those guardians that know much more about their companions, are easier for us because they know a lot, give us a lot of information. And it is amazing how we can change with water or with a pill, a sugar pill, right?
Or salt.
Or that's right. So yeah, it's very, yeah, it's
Or
someone,
the energy of salt, I should say.
you know, embassy. Yeah.
Right.
So some people, when we take the first consultation, they are really like, why are you asking me those questions, right? Like, why are you bothering me? And they're like anxious, like, I don't know why, I don't know why. So finally, they understand the why.
Mm-hmm.
And the next session, they give you like, oh my God, this is the laboratory. Yeah, I didn't know you needed that. So that's amazing how we can change those.
Or they might say, no one's ever asked me about that before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's why we take so long during the first intake, because we need time to know that pet in the environment, right? What else would you share about homeopathy with us?
It's really hard. But it's so beautiful.
We know that.
That's worth working on. I think you said something, Jody, about you're going to be studying it
The
for
whole life. Yeah.
the whole life, forever.
Yeah, but we are so happy doing it. We're not overwhelmed, right?
No,
No,
no.
it's wonderful. It just, can I tell a case story?
Yeah, of course.
I just thinking about how it's so wonderful, and how, well, I think of two patients in particular, that there's no way any other kind of medicine could have helped these patients. Not at all. One of them is a dwarf miniature horse named Cookie. And he has, because she's a dwarf miniature, she's built in a way that isn't good for her body, that isn't good for her comfort. And so her head is very large in comparison to her body, and has very short legs, and she has a prognathism, so that her lower jaw is longer, and she has had really severe hydrocephalus, and it just kept getting worse. And I had been treating her with acupuncture and chiropractic for a couple of years, but she just kept getting worse. And she would seek, and every time she'd have her hooves trimmed, she was in so much pain afterwards, because it was just too hard, because her head is so big. She would go forward, and it was too hard to have her hooves picked up. And the farriers who would trim her hooves would get very angry because she wouldn't be able to hold it. But it was because she physically couldn't. Yeah. And I gave her a homeopathic remedy that fit someone who had a developmental issue with hydrocephalus. And her eyes had gotten really far on the side because her head just kept widening. Her fontanelle, the opening here, just kept getting larger. And it went back slowly, gradually over time. And then when I would go back to recheck her neck, which her biggest problem was, her neck was always so painful because it was holding this giant head that was having problems. And she would be cranky because of course she was sore. Her neck started becoming less and less and less painful.
Wow.
And she was able to have farriers, trim her hooves. No, they did switch farriers because that previous farrier had become irritated with her, but no problem for the farrier. Head, neck, no problem. Her head started to go back together. Her eyes started to get to normal place. Instead of way over here, this regular side of her head for a horse, you know. It's really been remarkable because they really would have had to euthanize her because of pain.
Wow.
And then another one, this one I just wrote up for my veterinary certification because I put that on hold for the whole time that I've been in the human school because I'm like, I'll just wait and do this. And this is a dog, a Labrador, who has central nuclear myopathy, which is a type of muscular dystrophy that's genetic in Labradors. And they have a very hard time when they're very young, and then they kind of stabilize as a young adult, and they stay that way for the rest of their lives. They have almost no muscles on their body. They're very weak, and they can walk a bit, but they have to lay down frequently. Well, this particular dog, his name is Bear. I started seeing him when he was 4, and I gave him a remedy after, you know, the long intake and everything. And he has gained muscle. He built, before all of his muscles were atrophied. His head just looked like, you know, a bony head, no muscles, especially the temporal muscles. And now they're normal. He can walk twice as far as he used to at once without stopping. Before, he'd have to lay down about every few hundred yards and lay down for 5 to 10 minutes. Sometimes just a few seconds, but most of the time for a little while, and then he'd get up and walk again. And now he can walk all the way without having to lay down.
Wow.
Right, and that's something we are told, both of these things we are told cannot be cured in conventional. Those are incurable diseases. And yes, he could have a normal lifespan, but he would have difficulty. He wouldn't be able to walk much. He would look kind of sad, you know, without any muscles. But he was able to change. So big things like that we're told are impossible are not impossible. And that really makes me excited and happy. And really,
those make me so happy. Yeah, it's because it's great to help cases that of things that you're like, well, this was a gentler therapy, or this was a, you know, a swifter therapy, or but to see those cases, as you said, Jody, that conventional medicine shrugs and says, we don't have an answer, you know, those are the real beauties. Yeah.
You know what, can I just tell one more? It just makes me think of one other one. So I have this little white dog, right? We already said little white dogs have a lot of problems. And this particular patient, the reason she's on my mind is because a dog trainer who owns the only positive reinforcement only dog training business, well, one of the only ones in my area. And I haven't talked to this woman in years. I treated her dogs a long time ago, and they eventually passed away of old age. But she came up to me recently, and we were at a place together, and she said, do you know what, that dog, Misty, her name is, because of Misty, I want to refer everybody to you, because that is just the most incredible case, because they tried everything with Misty. Misty had seizures from every medication she was given, and from anesthesia, from anything. She would just have seizures. She had seizures before I met her, but she was also vicious, little tiny, vicious little thing. Not vicious to me, but vicious to one of her people, and her people are elderly. So it was very dangerous. One of her people would always bruise badly from the trees, and his skin would peel because he's elderly. And so it was a very dangerous situation, and the grandchildren couldn't be around, and that was very upsetting. They'd have to put her in a different room, all of this. And treating her, it's been a gradual treatment over a few years to get her. So she's fantastic, but right away, she never bit the man again. Her seizures went away as long as they didn't anesthetize her and give her conventional drugs. And these all the people at this dog training business saw this because they would walk her and work with her, and they're like, no, she's really good. She likes us. She doesn't try to bite us, nothing. She's like really smart and really good. And finally we came up with the remedy she's on now is just like amazing, but all along it just kept getting better and better and better and better. Because of this dog, I mean, other people probably would have euthanized this dog, but these people are very dedicated and adore her. And actually the one human had homeopathy as a child growing up, had a homeopathy to their house, and so knew about it and really wanted to, and has seen gradual improvement over time. With, I mean, it's been pretty significant. The dog also would urinate all over the place and had diarrhea all the time, and that stuff resolved with the first remedy. So it's been a remarkable change. And just to see, there are a lot of patients like that too, who would be euthanized for behavior issues, that the drugs didn't work and they were biting people. And now they're good dogs. And not that they weren't good dogs before, but they were in a state that made them feel that way.
Yeah, that's true. It's yeah, it's really remarkable the changes we see in those cases, right? Yeah. Do you remember a specific case, Laura?
Oh yeah. It's funny. I was thinking about behavior cases when you were talking, Jody, because I remember we were taught that in the veterinary course that, you know, homeopathy, it doesn't substitute for training, but it can often, as you say, bring an animal out of the state that prevents it from being able to be trained or to integrate into a household or do whatever it is that would allow it to live a real happy, full life with its people. And there was one that I just had recently that was a Saint Bernard, and I since she was a puppy, you know, I worked with her, and as she hit puberty, she just went through a complete personality change. She lived with another large dog who was an Akita, and this really great dog, and with her two people, and she just started, would go into these uncontrollable rage episodes out of nowhere. Just, you know, they couldn't find an association. I mean, it was definitely associated with the onset of her menses, but it was not timed to that afterwards. And, you know, she attacked the other dog, she attacked them. They thought they were going to have to euthanize. They actually moved away about 2 hours away while we were in the midst of this, but kept coming back and doing telemedicine appointments. And you know, we got her on the right remedy, and she started improving. And she's now, you know, they couldn't even work with a trainer with her before we could, you know, before the remedy. And she's now with a fabulous trainer, and she walked in, you know, the other day, and they said, we don't even have to use a leash with her now. You know, she eats right beside the other dog. She was like, you know, a movie dog, like a big, you know, 160-pound lap dog, but she's 160 pounds. That's dangerous, you know, to have a dog who's having rage episodes. And I was thinking about one of the first cases that I saw, which had two golden retrievers, and the one was much older when I started seeing it, and the other was maybe 7-8 months. And the older one, they had just moved into our area, had been diagnosed with inflammatory bowel disease years and years ago, you know, and was on budesonide, which is an oral steroid, of course, and you know, just all the side effects with the steroid. And the people said, oh my gosh, we're seeing the same thing happen now in the 7 or 8 month old dog. You know, the appetite's finicky and having some bowel issues. And so they went the whole conventional pathway and got the whole workup done, and biopsies and diagnosis and everything. And then they were handed the steroids, and they said, no, thank you. And they came back, and we started working with that dog with homeopathy. And we were able to help the older one a little bit, but, you know, after like 8 years of steroids, and it was near the end of its life, you know, I think we helped to ease its life a little bit. But the younger one, which went from a rack of bones that they couldn't get any weight onto, you know, we worked, and it was young still and vibrant. And so the changes you see are often faster, you know, in a young, really, you know, healthy and vital animal like that. But we got about 6 months into it, and then I didn't hear from him. I thought, uh-oh, you know, you never know. Either everything's really great or something really bad happened.
I know.
and then as often happens with these cases, like almost a year later, I suddenly I was thinking about them, you know, and they just popped into my mind. And I get a call within a couple of days and they said, well, we have another problem. Well, now he's a typical golden retriever, and we need to get some weight off of him now because he can eat anything he wants to, and he's healthy as a horse, and he's kind of pudgy. So
what about the other problems?
I know. Like, do you have a good diet?
Yeah, that's amazing.
Because they were so excited that their dog now would eat and could eat anything and was so healthy that they just kept feeding it.
That's amazing.
Once it got back to his healthy golden retriever state, it just kept eating.
That's great. We have learned, the three of us and Steph that couldn't be here, like it has been a whole process for us and for our companions and our clients and everybody. It's been amazing how everybody's shining again, right? And how we can make the difference in so many cases, right?
And it's beautiful, Rosie. That is, it's making a difference, one animal, one person at a time.
Yeah.
And that's
it was another tool
doing it
the first time, and now it is the tool, right?
And then once one animal in the household or one human in the household starts to feel better, then there's a change in the whole atmosphere.
Yeah.
And then everyone else can start to heal too. Maybe they want to be treated. If something else comes up, they may notice that there was another animal in the household that had a problem that they were ignoring because that animal had a more significant problem. Now that they're well, now let's work on this one. And then they all feel better. And then, you know, we are able to treat family systems too with the, you know, not just veterinary too. So it's just such a beautiful thing to see whole families feel better, whole barns of animals feel better, whole households of animals feel better. It's really fantastic. And then they just start getting along and feeling well with each other. And even if we think about ourselves, I don't know if that's happened to you, but I just feel better and better about my own situation, not only being a vet and being a homeopathic vet, but about my family and the world I live in and everything. It just seems so much, it feels so much better because I'm getting treated too.
Yeah.
And because I see the improvement in my patients.
Yeah, doing that in work.
Yeah,
helps us to help others.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Ladies, it's been an hour. And we can talk more. It's such a pleasure having you here. Thanks a lot for accepting the invitation.
Oh, you are most welcome, Rosie. It has been wonderful to catch up with you both.
Thank you so much for
right.
giving me this time. Bye-bye.
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 Gracias a todos por escucharnos. Espero que les guste esta entrevista. Pronto estará disponible para ustedes. Cualquier duda estamos al pendiente. Saludos.